So this morning, I want us to go straight to the word. And I want to talk about choosing a God-honoring marriage. Choosing a God-honoring marriage. Again, let me repeat what I have said here repeatedly, that this teaching I am doing for the sake of those of you that are yet to get into the space of marriage, those of you that are just preparing to do so, and those of us who have already done it, but we have a responsibility to shepherd and support others to do it. So each one of us, depending on your particular context or situation, there is a way this should speak to you. This is Malachi. Malachi, you know that Malachi is a prophet of God. God is using Malachi because there's been a lot of things going wrong with the nation of Israel. And Malachi basically is correcting practice. And part of the things that he addresses is the aspect of marriage. And maybe it will help to begin from verse 13. I don't know the verse 13 because this one picks it. Yeah. This is the second thing that you do. He had already mentioned the first one, but this is the second thing. And he says, you cover the altar of the Lord with tears, with weeping and crying. And so he does not regard the offering anymore, nor receive it with goodwill from your hands. Okay. And then his rhetoric questions. Yet you say, for what reason? And he said, because the Lord has been witness between you and the wife of your youth, with whom you have dealt treacherously. Yet she is your companion and your wife by covenant. Then verse 15? But did he not make them one, having a remnant of the Spirit? And why one? Because he seeks godly offspring. Therefore, take heed to your spirit and let none deal treacherously with the wife of his youth. So God here is addressing the issue of respecting the union of marriage. And as you can see, this specific address is to the men. You would understand that in that culture, men had a unfettered space in terms of control. And so women had no voice. Women were not able to determine anything. Remember what I said, was it last week that, or the other week, that when a man wanted to marry a girl, they did not require the consent of the girl. They just went to the father and said, I want your daughter and I'm taking her. And if the father is okay with the man, then he'll say yes. And once the father said yes, then the girl would not say no. And so that was the culture then. Of course, right now it's different. We cannot apply that kind of practice because things have changed, culture has changed, and also there are laws that govern the institution of marriage, and they are respected and upheld by the government. So let's go to Hebrews 13:4. This is again another foundational scripture which gives us a strong basis on what to build on as far as choosing a God-honoring marriage is concerned. The Bible says marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. And so that forms the basis of our teaching today, because a lot of it will be based on information that is not necessarily biblical. And I want to be very contextual today because this is a practical subject that we must deal with because we live on earth, we live in Kenya. And so there are certain provisions that undergird the institution of marriage, and we need to address that. I'll be talking about some legal issues, and I want to say here that I'm not a legal person by profession, and I am neither a a judicial officer. But what I'm talking about is common knowledge. It's available if you want to look for it. And so one of the days we'll get some time to get some people who we are blessed to have lawyers in our midst, and they can be able to come and deal with some specific issues that we would have questions about. So let me introduce the sermon by saying that in our Constitution, Article 45 recognizes the family as the basic, natural, and fundamental unit of society. So for those of us that have not read our Constitution, I want you to know that even in this country, our Constitution recognizes that the family is the basic, natural, and fundamental unit of society. And in that sense, the Constitution of the land actually agrees with God's intention and purpose. The Marriage Act of 2014, which of course became operational, I think, in 2015, therefore was enacted to provide for the recognition and protection of the family by the state. So as much as we are Christians, I want you to know that the Constitution of our country recognizes marriage as the basic marriage, which of course is a family, leads to family, because without marriage, really, there is no family. So family is the basic, natural, fundamental unit of society. And so because of that, an act was put in place which provides for the recognition and the protection of the family by the state. So as Christians, as we get together to get married and to do the things that we do, I want you to know that we are not doing that in an abstract space. We are doing that in a space that is governed and protected by the state through the law. And this act defines marriage as a voluntary union of a man and a woman, whether in a monogamous or polygamous union, and registered this act. Okay, now what I'm talking about is not biblical, so don't raise your eyebrows. I'll come back to the church. But I want to tell you what the government envisages, so that as a believer you know that according to the law, the government says through the law or the Constitution that marriage is first of all voluntary. And I told you that right now you can't force anyone to get married. You can't walk to your daughter and tell her you have been single for too long. I'm demanding by next week you bring me a son. You can't do that. Neither can a father do that to the son, because legally then you'll be actually infringing their rights. Because it needs to be voluntary. They need to be willing to do that. And that's why you notice that it is not allowed for anyone below the age of 18 to enter into marriage, because up to age 18 is not expected that somebody is sound enough to make a voluntary decision. And so when someone marries a person younger than 18, then you find that there is a problem, and such people actually taken to court, and that is a jailable offense. And so the government also recognizes that marriage is between a man and a woman. Okay? It's interesting that the Constitution provides for that, but you still find people pushing for the enactment of laws or amendments to allow same-sex marriages, and that in a way would actually contravene the Constitution. And so at least in that sense, and unless this definition have changed, because I didn't check whether, since I understand there's something that was signed and agreed upon, that this still holds. But I believe that we believe in this country that marriage should be between a man and a woman. And then where the government differs with the church is that the government also recognizes both monogamy and polygamous unions as long as they are registered under this Marriage Act of 2014. Now, that's not to tell brothers here to start having ideas about monogamy, because I want to tell you biblically, marriage is a sacred, lifelong, heterosexual union between one man and one woman, established by God at creation, and it is characterized by mutual love, faithfulness, and sexual exclusivity. So where we differ with the government in terms of this constitutional provision is that as Christians, we believe that marriage is monogamous. So I hope I'm clear, so that you don't go and say, Bishop Mwalili just say, and when the prophet speaks, it is done. Now, that's not what I've said. I've simply said I was giving you the government position, but the biblical position is that marriage is a sacred, lifelong heterosexual union between one man and one woman, established by God at creation, and the characteristic of it is that mutual love, faithfulness, and sexual exclusivity. Let me take you to the types of marriages in Kenya. Types of marriages in Kenya. Now, Kenya legally recognizes 5 types of marriages, namely Christian, civil, customary, Hindu, and Islamic. So, it is important for us, for those of you that have not cared to check and to find out, that in this country, legally speaking, there are only 5 types of marriage that you can find yourself in. Either Christian, either civil, or customary, or Hindu, or Islamic marriage. And now this helps you understand why my title of my message today is choosing a God-honoring marriage. Because you are free to choose any of these ways to get married. But because we are Christians, we have to ask ourselves, which marriage do I choose to get into so that I can honor God? Because remember where we started reading, especially Hebrews 13:4, where the Bible says marriage is honorable by all. Why honorable? Because we want to honor God. And then in Malachi, God is saying, can you protect this union that I have provided for you with your wife, with your husband? Because it's a covenant. So God expects that when we get into marriage, we are doing it in an honorable way. And so I thought it would be good. And I just felt led to discuss with you so that as people choose, because right now people are very free to decide what to do. I mean, we have cases where even brethren are deciding they want to do a customary wedding, marriage. Others are doing a mixture of the two. So it's important for us to clear these things, at least at a level whereby as you step into this, and also as parents, you know how to guide your children, especially when we want to safeguard our faith and our Christian values. But let me just say that regardless of the type of all marriages, they must be registered with the Registrar of Marriages to be legally recognized. So I want you to notice that you can get married, but if you don't register your marriage, whichever one you choose, it will not be legal. So the day legal issues arise, you'll be standing on the air. There will be nothing that can support you legally. So the essence of registering marriages is not so much about faith and purity and anything else. It's purely for legal purposes. It's important for us to understand that the reason marriages are registered is, first of all, because we need to be compliant with the law, but also we want to provide a platform whereby in the event that there is need for legal intervention, then there is a basis for that. Otherwise, without it, someone will stay with you and you do all manner of things, and then one day they will say, you were never my wife. And then there will be a legal battle. No, I need this piece of land. That's vehicle. I need that account. And it becomes such a huge problem. But when a marriage is legally recognized and is registered, then it becomes easy. What do you do? Produce a marriage certificate. Then you go to the Registrar of Marriages, confirm that you got married to this lady or to this man is on this date. And this is your wife, this is your husband. And so it becomes easier for the legal processes. Because remember, we said earlier in my opening statement that the reason why the Marriage Act of 2014 was enacted is so that it can provide for the recognition and protection of the unit. So there is need for recognition, but also protection. And remember again, the government is responsible for protecting the lives of people and property. So there is protection. So the whole essence of the need and the importance to register your marriage is so that there will be recognition, and then you also comply, and it becomes much easier. And so that's why for those of you that are already married and your marriage is not registered, it will be important to do that. And that you can do very easily by just visiting the registrar's office. And I think today they have even, if I'm not wrong, they have actually devolved. And if I'm wrong, I need to be corrected. I think it's possible to go to some other places, not necessarily Nairobi, depending on where you come from, and you can have that done. And that way, it helps. So I need to clear that. Now let's look at, today I only talk about three. I won't talk about Islamic and Hindu, because I don't think any of you here who is really interested in going that way. Is there anyone interested in going that way? I'm not sure how that will honor God. Okay. So I just talk about three. The rest you can go and read for yourself. So the first one, and I'm talking about the types of marriage recognized by law in this country. The first one is called Christian marriage. And just before I move on, I want to say this, that the type of marriage you will have also dictates the kind of wedding you will have normally. And the two are different. Marriage and wedding is different. Wedding is a ceremony. Marriage is a lifelong life that you live in. Okay, me, I'm addressing the marriage, but there is a wedding bit of it, the whatever you want to do. And maybe one of the times, I don't know when I'll talk about this, ceremony is a choice. Is not, the only precedence we have about ceremony in terms of marriage is to see that Jesus actually attended a wedding. So that doesn't mean that he prescribed it, okay? I don't think Jesus would bar anyone from going to heaven if you get married and you didn't have a ceremony, a big ceremony for that matter. I don't think so. These are personal and social issues. I would recommend that if you can do a ceremony, please do. Wedding ceremonies are good because there are certain things in life that only happen once. So if you don't do it, it's a milestone. It's like a birthday. It's like, something that has happened and you need to just do something about it and then involve, friends and family, relatives, and also the church. And so that, the society is also part of what you're doing. So there's nothing wrong with doing a ceremony. Some people just want to get married quietly and they just appear, we are married. Okay, that may be okay, but it raises a lot of questions. It's good to have a few people and also make sure that if you must go that way, then we know. Because I told you the other day, the church is such that when you get married, we need not publicly you've gotten married. Because in church, if you are seen with a woman and we never know they became your wife, or a man and they never became your husband, we have too many questions. So spare us. That's the nature of the church, and that's our tradition as a church. So part of the reason why we encourage public participation of things, even if you are not going to have too many people, is so that you help maintain the tradition of the church where there are certain values that we need to uphold. So that you don't just appear here, you are holding a woman, she's heavy with a child, and another one you are holding. We don't know when this happened. We are not aware, and we have always known you. Then you leave us with a lot of questions. You just see us talking in twos. Spare us the temptation to get carnal, to discuss you and to talk about you. Okay, I just detoured a little bit. Let's talk about the Christian marriage. This one is celebrated in accordance with the rites of a Christian denomination. This is how now the Lord describes it. But I'll come and talk about orthodoxy as far as we are concerned. Remember, I'm talking about what the Constitution says and what the law says. But I need to help you understand that as a church, our standards are higher than the laws of the land. Okay? Because why this is dangerous is because, remember, denominations have different values. That's why there's a challenge, because what would be considered a Christian wedding in one denomination, in another one, especially Orthodox or Evangelical, it is considered otherwise. Let me continue so that I make it clear what I'm saying. This one must also be officiated by a licensed church minister. Licensed, like myself, and I think we need to license a few more now, because I've been joining weddings for so many years that I meet people who I join weddings and I can't remember I did. That's a sign that I need to get out of the scene. It's been too long. Okay? So this gives the Christian marriage a civil aspect. Although it's Christian, but then because it must be officiated by a government licensed minister. But in church, there's a Christian aspect of it and a civil. And I'll talk about what I believe is a Christian aspect of it. Now, the other thing about the Christian marriage, according to the law, it is monogamous. If you decide to do what the government calls a Christian wedding, then you can't marry another wife. If you do that, you will be guilty of something called bigamy. Bi is two. Gamy is marriage. Okay? And you can be jailed. Back to the licensing. If somebody officiates a wedding and they are not licensed, they are liable for jail term not exceeding, I think not less than 5 years. So if someone pretends to be a very nice anointed pastor and you allow them to join you without seeing their certificate and they are caught, the marriage, in my view, will be annulled, but also whoever did that is liable for a jail term because it's illegal. It is flouting the law. And nowadays, those of you that are getting married, you know how tough it is. Before you even can hold a wedding, you must go make an appointment, take the copy of the minister who is going to join you, and state where the wedding will be held. It is so tough, tight, because the government is trying to protect the institution of the family by ensuring that people get into marriage in the right way. So that's why I keep telling you, don't just meet somebody on the road and then you hold hands and you become husband and wife. Or sisters, don't just visit a man and nguo zinafuatilishwa baadaye. That's too casual. You're making a mistake. This thing is much more serious, and as much as God protects, also the state does it. Now, let me talk about now the church so that I make some things clear here. Among the evangelicals, and especially we in the Pentecostal and what we call Orthodox Christianity, a Christian wedding needs to have at least 4 features. 1, it must involve 2 born-again heterosexual believers. That's a repetition. Born-again and believers is the same. So it must involve 2 born-again heterosexual or 2 heterosexual believers. So in other words, for you, because nowadays we have even people who are coming to, I think I have joined a wedding where the people were not really Christian. I think I have. But according to them and according to the law, because ideally, I shouldn't refuse because I'm a licensed minister, because I'm licensed to perform Christian weddings according to the government, not according to me. Are you understanding what I'm saying? But in church here, if we are going to join you as a husband and wife, then the first thing is the 2 of you need to be believers. If 2 people walk in here and they are not believers, and we join them in according to the law is Christian, but according to the faith, it is not. Because what makes Christian Christian? It is the ingredients of Christianity in the people. Number 2, among the evangelicals, a Christian wedding is devoid of premarital sex. In other words, you have not engaged in the sexual union. Because according to the Bible, remember where we read in Hebrews 13:4, Fornicators and adulterers, God will judge. People live together, they even have children, and they walk in church with white weddings, and they come and they are joined in front here. In my view, that's not the way to do it for Christians. If you already got married, what you need is registration of your marriage. Don't bother people planning a wedding, killing bulls and doing many. You're already married. Uko na watoto wangapi? Si umeelewa? Kwa nini unatusumbua? Finally, the other one is customary. Customary is celebrated according to the traditional customs of a community, and it is potentially polygamous. Okay? Until you register it. Because if you register it, then the things change. But I'm told that even with that, you must conduct it according to the customs of that community and the parties involved. The rites are foundational features of the marriage and are often considered more important than civil or religious ceremony. And that's why now some of our parents and our uncles, they want to push you into the customary things because they don't believe that the civil or the Christian one is actually good enough. And that's why you find that a Kamba girl will be forced to go home and some 3 goats must be provided. And if you don't provide that, even if the pastor pronounces you husband and wife, according to the Kamba people, you were never married.